This is probably my favourite dry fly to tie, and there are two reasons for that. One, I really enjoy tying it. You know, there's something really satisfying about the way this comes together. But secondly, it's a fantastic fly to fish. It really does do some serious damage. It's a devastating pattern, both early season when they're up and looking for all sorts of strange things coming down for the first time as you approach the river in sort of giddy excitement in the early season. But as the season progresses, you can scale down and fish this fly in different hook sizes. So in the vise I've got a size 14 at the moment, which is what I'm going to tie today. But I tie this in 16s, 18s and even 20s for when they're up and you know, feeding on little olives and all sort of various different bits and pieces. It's superbly versatile, and I'm yet to find a situation, to be honest, where this isn't in my mind at some point during a dry fly session. So let's get on with the tie. This is an emerger, and I'm tying it because of that on a Klinkhammer hook. This is a H390BL, a barbless size 14. I love this pattern. It's such a great pattern. It's got a lovely wide gape to it. You can probably see from that picture on the hook box, you know, it's just such a lovely wide gape, and that point is razor sharp. Tying thread is Nanosilk. Really fine silk, and part of the reason I use this is because we are using a quill to create the body of this fly, so this really helps you with the profile. I'm just going to lay on my tying thread, and I'm going to take it round the corner, but not too far round, so about there I think is about the right place to finish. Just put a bed of silk there to start off with, because I just find that the quills bed in slightly better. Now the next part of the process is this. This is a Polish Quills Fluo Yellow stripped peacock quill. These things are fantastic. Although it says they're Fluo Yellow, actually when you tie them you realise when they go on they look olive. In fact they look light olive, which is a fantastic colour. The other thing that's going on is some holographic tinsel. I'm going to use a little bit of Cdc and a feather from my Grizzle Hackle cape, and also a little bit of fox squirrel dubbing at the end. So first things first, I'm just going to clip off a length of holographic tinsel, just a couple of inches, and I'm going to tie that in all the way around the bend, like so. And essentially what I'm going to be doing is creating a little hot spot. Just grab my hackle pliers and just do a few turns of this, like a little hot butt, holographic, just to catch the light. As I say, this is an emerger pattern, so it sits through the film. And what you'll find is, if you stick this in a glass of water, you'll be able to see clearly where that little holographic tinsel just catches glints of light outside the quill. And my theory with this is, like lots of things, like lots of the flies I tie, there needs to be something in the fly, in your imitation, that will tempt a fish that's feeding on naturals to grab your imitation instead of the natural insect. And these little kind of edges here, this little bit of holographic tinsel that just catches the light, might attract the attention, especially if there's competitive feeding going on. You know, a fish that thinks that another fish is going to eat its dinner will grab something at the first opportunity. And why will it grab it? Well, it's because it sees something interesting, and this little bit of tinsel can actually be the thing that grabs the fish's attention, and it takes your fly above all the other naturals. You'll notice I've taken my tying thread now back down to leave about 5mm of the holographic showing, and now I'm going to grab one of my Fluo quills and I'm going to introduce that to the fly. With these you'll notice that there's basically a stripe, so you've got a dark side and a light side. Start this off dark side down and just lay it along the hook a little bit and catch it in, and just secure it down to the shank of the hook. I am going to use some resin in a minute to make sure it's all nice and tight, and I'm just taking my tying thread to leave myself enough room at the head of the fly. On a size 14 you've got a little bit of room to make sure I can get my other materials in. Okay, hackle pliers next. Just be quite delicate with this. I mean, you will break the odd one, but these Polish quills do seem to be pretty stable. And I'm just going to use soft hands and nice, even, precise turns to build up a lovely looking body for this fly. Just take your time with this and concentrate really hard on trying to get those turns nice and even. You know, if you get the chance to see a real insect, have a little look at the thorax and the body and see how perfect it is. And you can hopefully see from those turns of the Polish quills, peacock stripped quill there, that those turns are lovely and even, and it really stands up and looks like a real insect body with that, just that little bit of the tinsel poking out of the back. Okay, next thing, I need to find my bottle of resin on my desk somewhere. There it is. Okay, so just some UV resin, not a thick layer at all. I don't want this to be a big bulky fly, or certainly not this end of it anyway. I need that to be really kind of delicate because I want it to poke through the water's film, the surface film. You know, as I said a little bit earlier on tying this fly, one of the best things about it is it's great on sunny days. And the reason for that is sometimes you'll get fish that will look up, will see a fly on the surface and start to come. And if they have to go too far, especially if it's bright and sunny, they'll turn away. They don't want to come, as we say, all the way up. They'll come kind of 3/4 of the way, realise they've got a little bit more work to do and turn away. But with these emerger patterns, this that actually pokes through the film, this will sometimes entice a take from those fish that you wouldn't normally get if they're floating along the surface and sitting on the top rather than through it. Okay, UV torch, and as you see it sort of fluoresces as it goes through, and you can probably see those turns of the quill just pinging there. That's lovely. Really nice and even. The more you practice doing this, by the way, the neater you'll get. So don't necessarily expect to get it right first time. It took me ages, and I went through lots of different types of quills too. You know, some of them break really easily, and actually you shouldn't put up with that. You know, shop around and make sure you get the right stuff. And these ones are pretty reliable. So when I see these for sale, I usually snap up about 10 packets, and you know, they look after me really well. You'll see me using these on a few other patterns too, especially my quilled nymph, which is a really effective pattern. Anyway, that's for another day. Right, so quill has gone in, resin over the top, thread is parked about, I suppose, 5 or 6 millimeters from the eye. Next thing that's going in, some Cdc feathers. Just natural stuff, and what I'm looking for on a size 14 is 3 feathers that are roughly the same size. On a smaller hook you'd use fewer feathers, so probably on a 16 you're talking about probably 3 still. On an 18 you'd probably only use 2, and likewise on a 20. So there we have it. All I'm going to do is line up the tips of those Cdc feathers like so. And then I'm going to tie them in facing that way. So just measure them up on the hook using my fingers. And I want them the same sort of length of the hook. So that's a little bit too much. Just swap fingers like so. When you're happy, just double check that. Still a little bit too long. That's about right. Just lay them on the top, pinch and loop over the top. Just a couple of turns. Just going to check it once more. Make sure they sit on top. A couple of turns to secure everything down. Don't take it too far down, otherwise you'll end up with a big bulky piece which doesn't look great. Just fold those back, throw a couple of turns of thread over the other side, and then I'm in a position where I can use a horizontal cut to snip away the waste piece of the CDC. You can see there's a little bump of material there. I'm just going to use some thread to cover that up a wee bit, and that's going to be the base for the last 2 bits of the fly, which is going to be the hackle and a little bit of dubbing. I'm going to put some dubbing on first, and I'm just going to use some fox squirrel short and spiky fibres, don't want too much of it. I'm going to put a couple of turns behind the wing, just fold it back like so, and a couple of turns in front, and then I'm going to return my thread back to the point side of the hackle rather than the eye side. Next I'm going to tie in some Grizzle Hackle. Now I'm going to take a hackle from the centre of the cape because I want reasonably shortish fibres. I'm actually starting to get down to the kind of tail end of usefulness of this one for the little fibres for dries. I'm running out of the ones that I really like, but that's about the right sort of length here. And I just want the tip, so I'm just going to pinch that off, strip away a few barbs from the bottom to expose the point, lay it at 45 degrees and just catch it in 3 or 4 turns behind, again fold back, just catch that in front and return my thread behind once more. And I'm just going to get my scissors and very carefully trim off that piece of the hackle. There you go, ready to go. So next thing, hackle pliers. Grab the tip of my hackle and I'm going to do 1 turn behind the wing and keeping it behind the thread too, and then 2 kind of diagonally, so 1 round that side of the hackle, the eye, then round the back of the thread again, and 1 more in the same place like so. 1 over the top so I can secure it all in place. It's kind of a bit delicate swapping fingers around, but you'll get the hang of it. And just then secure that down and trim off the remaining piece of the hackle. Just be careful here that you don't kind of go and cut in too much. You kind of want to push the tips in and just pop that away like so. Just double check. I'm just going to brush everything back and seeing if I've got room to put in. I have got a little bit of room where I'm just going to put in the tiniest pinch of a bit more fox squirrel, just to create a sort of an attractive head. And I'm just going to brush those fibres back with my forefinger and thumb, just to keep everything out of the way and give me room for a whip finish. This is where you need to be careful not to get too greedy, because what you don't want to do is cover up the eye of the hook, and then when you get to the river and everything's hatching, realise that you've covered the hook up and you can't get your tippet through the flipping eye of the hook, which is very frustrating. A couple of whip finishes. Just brush everything back. See, I think I've done it. I think I've tied too much of the fox squirrel on there, and I'm going to have to clean that out. Remember to do that before I put it in my fly box. Here we go. One last job. So the way that is at the moment, it will fish fine. In fact, it will fish fantastically, but I quite like to trim out the under fibres. So I'm just going to grab my other scissors and just give it a little bit of a haircut underneath. And I just think what it does then is it sits so nicely on the surface film, that top part with this bottom bit going through. It just really does fish well. There we are. Yeah, I'm going to have to clean that eye out, aren't I? Dear, oh dear. Oh, overzealous, you see. Should have left it as it was. There we are, finished object with a little bit of cleaning up to do. There's a fantastic fly, the olive emerger, with a quilled body, a little bit of holographic tinsel, which will just persuade those hungry trout and grayling to grab this fly ahead of all their imitations. I hope you've enjoyed the tie. I hope if you tie it up, you get 1 or 2 fish to rise on it. Remember to tie this also in 16s, 18s and even 20s. Practice that quill technique so you get really neat layers of the Polish quills. Good luck with it. Hope you enjoy it.